Welcome again, Swamini ji, and we are very honored to have you on our show. Please start your session.
Thank you. Start with a prayer. Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So we continue after yesterday. In yesterday's session, we explored why the Bhagavad Gita is a teaching for all of humanity. Why? Because the problem of the human being is universal, and it is in the form of not quite being able to accept oneself as one is, because really speaking, the limitless being is as though enclosed in a prosthetic structure called the body, and always struggles against that limitation. The Bhagavad Gita is known as both Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. So therefore it has the essence of the teachings of the Upanishads, which is the highest teaching. The Upanishads, as some people probably know, is the last portion of the Veda, which is revealed knowledge, and it is Yoga Shastra. So how to manage my life? Who am I really speaking? Who is this entity that people refer to as God? What is this world about? Is there a theory of everything? What is the nature of bondage? What is the nature of moksha? What kind of lifestyle do I need to live? But I live in modern contemporary times driving a Tesla. How does Bhagavad Gita apply? Is it really timeless, or was it time bound, etc., etc.? A lot of questions. And the Bhagavad Gita is really Amritam. It is a prasada, it is nectar, and by systematically studying it, when I say study it, I don't mean in an academic way. What I mean is you look at your life in the light of the Gita, and your life stands transformed. Of course, in this weekend, we are just having sort of a helicopter view of some of the key verses, and still these key verses are very, very important and very profound. Yesterday we saw the nature of the Atma. Bhagavan Krishna responds to Arjuna's question with teaching. Why teaching? Because the situation, the problem is one of ignorance, and therefore the only way out is knowledge. After unfolding the nature of the Atma, he talks about two lifestyles. Lifestyle as in, what is it that you're doing pretty much during the day? How do you use your time, effort and attention during the day determines what you are committed to, correct? So suppose if you are into daily trading on the stock market, then of course from 9 to 3 you're totally busy. Then the rest of the time you're thinking about, oh, I should have bought that stock, or maybe I should have sold that. So it's a committed lifestyle that to to that commitment, okay, which could be artha or whatever it is, okay, your time, effort, attention is invested in that. And so when Bhagwan talks about two lifestyles, he says it's very clear, since you want moksha, since you have discovered the human problem, you are no longer escaping into distraction because it is uncomfortable to face oneself. But Arjuna, you are not like that, and therefore for the sannyasis it is jnana yoga exclusively, okay, whereas for the karma yogis it is inclusive. Inclusive meaning I have my other pursuits of artha, kama with dharma as the framework. Alongside that I also pursue moksha. That's where we stopped yesterday. Then what is this karma yoga? Before he introduces it, he says, Swalpamasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. The human condition is fraught with a lot of anxiety, doubt and fear. And this fear is all in small things. Of course, given what this world is going through over the last so many months, the fears that were buried to the surface have all come up. Of course, the natural fear of death is always there, but alongside, what will happen? Will I get another job if I have been laid off? Or forget about promotion and we've had to take a pay cut. What will happen? What if I get COVID? What if someone else does in the family? What if my parents do and then there's no bed in the hospital, etc., etc. That I'm only talking with respect to COVID. There can be many other fears as well. Okay, so the fixed deposit interest is dropping and dropping and dropping further. No longer secure investment. What shall we do? So anyway, no worries. Bhagwan Krishna is here. So what does he say? He says that I am going to talk to you about karma yoga. And what is that? That all of us perform karma. Okay, karma we do translate as action, but it's more willful action, choice based action, which even a dog or a donkey will kick. You go near it, try to travel it, the donkey will kick. But the donkey does not perform karma, because the donkey is not going to get papa because he kicked one sadhu. Okay, donkey is programmed and he's just exhausting his karma. But human being is very blessed. Why? Because human beings have choice. Where there is choice, there is conflict. But where there is choice, there is karma. Action that comes from choice is karma, and that karma has karma phala, results of the action. And so we look at the very often quoted famous verse, but very often misunderstood verse, karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. So 2.47. This verse is often translated as do not work without expecting results. Okay, it's a wrong translation. Why? Because let's just look at Bhagwan Krishna. He is teaching Arjuna. Does he at least have minimum expectation that Arjuna will understand? Of course, otherwise why would he teach? Adi Shankaracharya wrote all these commentaries. He didn't write it for himself, he didn't need to. You can say, oh, he wrote for his shishyas. Why should he do that? Because he wants them to understand, because he sees the need in society. So when you look at the lives of our devatas or even our jnanis, wise people, no one does things without expecting, and it is right. You know, something is right with you if you expect. Okay, so this is what the verse is saying, that you have a choice, adhikaraha, only with respect to your karma. You have lot of freedom, you have lot of choices also. So karmani eva adhikaraha. Okay, that eva has to be underlined. Eva means alone with respect to karma, what you want to do in terms of your action. So many choices, adhikaraha asti. Then there's another important part in the verse, which is, but never with respect to the results. You don't have a choice there. Why? Because the results are shaped by laws and you did not create the laws. So with respect to work, suppose you are working for a company or you are an entrepreneur, you had a fantastic business plan and you were all set to launch in April, okay, your product, whatever your product. Of course, you know, executed it well, and then all your products were going to come and you were going to market it and so on. Karmani eva adhikaraha. Fantastic, you did a great job. But the result of your actions, you cannot control. Okay, the key word is you cannot control, but you can contribute. So you are always the contributor, never the controller. But then of course we know what happened in the world in this year, and therefore the results are not in your control. Of course I want the results to be in my control. Why? Because I have raga and dvesha. I have these very strong likes and very strong dislikes, and therefore when a result happens, it is not in keeping with what I wanted, right? So I react and I'm upset, and then I might call myself a failure. So this is all the drama of life, okay? But what I have to understand is that the laws are things that I understand. In fact, every discipline of knowledge, whether it's physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, are ways to understand the mind of Ishvara. What is all this about? So let's say my son sends me money. I don't have a son, I'm just giving an example, okay? My son sends me money. Then but I withdraw money from the ATM. So the ATM, did the ATM give me money? No. The son sent money, okay? But the ATM was shaped by some laws, and the laws actually made it possible for me to get the result. So now the result of every action, from where is it coming? Do I know anyone local who has made laws? Laws, okay, maybe laws of the house, laws of the company, rules that nobody reads. Even you make a new Gmail account, everyone just clicks blindly, I accept, I accept, I accept. I agree to terms and conditions. We have no idea what the terms and conditions are, and then we don't know where our data goes. But that's another story. So those rules are there. Those are all human-made rules. Even there might be algorithms also, the artificial intelligence for which humans are responsible. But the laws of this universe, in terms of if I throw something, it will fall to the ground at a particular speed. That law is not made by me. The way my body digests food, the way the air, vayu, goes into my nostrils and into my lungs and always comes out, thankfully. So Vayu does not say, you know what, this person has done so much pranayama, I really like this person's lungs, I'm going to be here only. Then that's it, over. Okay, Ram Nam Satya hai. But no, Vayu comes out. It is so perfect, the laws. And so what this verse is really telling us is telling us something very objectively, that we have tremendous choices. We can contribute to the result, but we can never control it, and therefore don't run away from karma, because generally that's what happens to us, that oh, I didn't get what I want, now it's okay, forget it, I'm not going to make any effort. The shloka warns us against this attitude. Further, what is being spoken of is a very important attitude that transforms your entire life, which is the definition of yoga. There are 3 definitions of karma yoga in Bhagavad Gita, and one is samatvam yoga uchyate, 2nd chapter. Samatvam, equanimity, more or less sameness of mind. And this is very beautifully there in the culture. Whenever you go to a temple, okay, you could go to any temple. Let's say you go to Hanuman's temple, okay, there's one nice mala of vada, and then you might go to Tirupati Balaji, or you might go to Kedarnath. You know, we are so blessed to have these temples all over, which remind us of the divinity of all forms. So you go, and the uniqueness about our temple is that you go there not to collectively pray with everyone, which also you do. You go there for darshanam. You go there for seeing Bhagavan clearly. And of course in the Upanishads also, we hear these words in the Bhagavad Gita, Yaf pashyati sa pashyati, the one who sees really sees. Darshanam is so important to us. And while you have darshanam, you know, especially during Aarti time, the Garbhagriha is a traditional temple, okay, not a commercialized temple. It is in complete darkness. But with that camphor and the way in which the Aarti is done, all of Bhagwan is lit up. And who lights up? You. With the light of awareness, you are able to see this entire Dakshinamurti, you know, Ashtabhrit. So, which is pretty much all forms, permutation, combination of 5 great elements. Beautiful. Then, after Aarti, you are waiting for prasada. We don't know what you will get, okay, depending on which temple it is, and depending on how long the queue is and how disciplined the crowd is, which rarely is in a temple. You extend your hand, then the pujari will put something. It could be tirtha, you know, sacred water for after the abhishekam, or it could be a fruit, it could be a laddu, it could be bhasma, you know, this sacred ash, or it could be a tulasi leaf. We don't know, okay, you will get something. But the deep inherent attitude in our culture is that whatever comes from the altar is sacred. So we do like this, or you do like this, or if you're not sure about the water, there are some people, okay, they will look around and they put it on their head, okay, because because still, you know, they're a little squeamish. So anyway, the point is, it's an ordinary object, right? It's just some water, it's some ash, it's some laddu or whatever. Or if you are diabetic, then no, even a diabetic will not say no to prasada. Why? Because it is prasada, it is sacred, it has come from the Lord. I totally accept it. I am cheerful. In fact, if I don't get prasad, I will be upset. I'll say, oh, that person got more than me, or you extended your arm and nothing. What this attitude is that an object has been transformed into seeing that it is sacred because it has come from Bhagwan and it is a blessing, and that is samatvam. That what is for a moment in a temple where I am open to life, I am open to receiving, I am open to seeing that whatever I need to get, Bhagwan is blessing me with. That momentary attitude I now extend to all of life. That's very difficult, but it is little easy also, because there are some results that I get in the different actions I am involved with, which are equal to what I expect. So I am so happy. Oh, it is prasad. In fact, we have a lot of names also in the country. So Devi Prasad, Lakshmi Prasad, Shankara Prasad. The names of the people are only like that. That to see that everything is a blessing. Even Santana, having a child, is also considered as a Lakshmi, a big blessing. Not everyone is blessed with that, So, this attitude that whatever I get has come from Bhagwan, and I try to have sameness of mind. Of course, I'm going to be disappointed if I don't get what I want, okay? But what this shloka is reminding us is that you can contribute, and you can contribute in a very, very big way. You can easily have samatvam and you can be delighted. Your head can hit the ceiling when you get results that are more than what you expect. Where we will struggle with our prasada buddhi is in situations where I got less than what I expected, or I got totally different from what I expected. But the beauty is, I know what this attitude is, I know what it does to me. I know that when I am in harmony with people around me, then there is prasannata, okay? Prasada, this prasada buddhi, meaning a mind that can command this sameness or equanimity or very deep, abiding, glad acceptance. You go for a walk in some nice greenery, you have natural samatvam. Why? Because you are not saying, oh, that tree, I think it should grow a little taller. That branch actually, doesn't make sense. It should fork a little bit. And then of course the fruits, what useless tree, this is not giving fruits properly. And look at the sky. I wanted deep blue skies, but this was always looking grey. So hopefully, we don't do these things. Whenever you go, or hopefully whenever you go for a walk in some very beautiful greenery, lovely, like nature, picturesque place, you are at peace because you don't want anything to be different. You have a natural acceptance and cheerfulness, and you feel very connected with all the forms. And it's the same you. It's the same you who was cribbing and complaining about so many problems, and then you say, okay, fine, I'm going for a walk. Okay, go. And then you come back very refreshed. Of course, physiologically, there are some changes that do take place. Alongside that, you come back cheerful. Why? Because you've experienced moments of being in harmony where you do not wish anything to be different, and you are also able to see that all this blessing, you didn't create it, but it is just so perfect. It's so beautiful, it's so exquisite, and you have no complaint against it. Okay, so one definition of yoga, which is very important for us to deal with our life. Second definition of yoga is yoga karmasu kaushalam. So with respect to karma, I have kaushalam. Kaushalam is a skill, a competence. This also is often wrongly translated as skill in action. By that standard, a terrorist also has kaushalam, okay? But this is not the kaushalam that Bhagwan Krishna is talking about. Kaushalam is a competence, okay? Definitely some skills are involved in my understanding of dharma and applying it in different situations. So very important, dharma is not a mandate of God. It's not like there are some 10 rules or 20 rules, you have to follow this, otherwise you're going to rot in hell. Dharma is the natural understanding in every human heart about norms and principles of this world. So I don't want to be hurt, the other doesn't want to be hurt. I don't want to be cheated, you don't want to be cheated. I don't want to be humiliated, nor do you. This understanding everyone is born with. People will say, no, it is social conditioning. No, that's not true. You see how much will a child learn, or how much would a child have learned when you see the child's behavior, it is there is a deep understanding of dharma. So this 5-year-old child says, when I went to the person's house, I said, wow, you have so many books here, very nice library. And the child says, but no one reads these books. Okay, the child is naturally honest. The parents are a bit embarrassed because of the child's honesty. But the child doesn't have to be taught, oh, you must be honest, honesty is the best policy. Adults need to be told. Why? Because, very often we do not bring dharma into our lives because of our raga and dvesha. And the thing about dharma is all the universal laws and principles. So, justice, compassion, ahimsa. So there is a very beautiful shloka also in 10th chapter. Ahimsa, samata, tushtihi, tapodanam, yashaha, ayashaha also, okay? Bhavanti bhava bhutanam matta eva prithak vidhaha. What is so beautiful about this shloka is that all this, okay, ahimsa, the practice of non-violence or least injury, harmlessness, samata, equanimity, tushtihi, contentment, tapaha, religious discipline, dhanam, giving, yashaha, fame, ayashaha, ill fame, okay. All these different dispositions, where have they come from? Matta eva. It has come from me, Bhagwan says, okay. That this entire framework of dharma has come from me. Dharayate iti dharma, it upholds society and it moves civilizations forward. That's the only way, everything is sustained and moves forward. And that is the universal framework. So Kaushalam is understanding these principles, which anyway is there in our heart, but to see the joy that I get when these principles are operational in my life. Because really, when we ask people, oh, what makes you happy, they say, oh, I feel so loved. Okay, that means love is important for you. Love is a subset of dharma. Oh, what about your work? Oh, I'm so happy, I'm fighting for justice. Very good. Justice also part of dharma. Oh, I want financial independence. Very good. That is also a subset of dharma. No, I want pleasure. That is also subset of dharma. But dharma can guide your karma. So, if dharma is the framework of one's life, then any karma that you do, you will do it keeping in mind what is the most appropriate thing to do, and that is yoga. Why is that yoga? Because you are focused on what a situation requires. It's a conflict situation, like always, and you bring certain principles to the fore in your behavior, in your actions, and that moves the situation forward in terms of growth and happiness for both people involved, and everyone is happy because dharma makes everyone happy universally. And so when I perform my karma, it then becomes an offering to Bhagavan. Why? Because it's not just about following some 20 rules. In fact, dharma is not a set of rules. It is just the beautiful dynamic understanding that dharma makes me happy and it makes everyone else also happy. And I try to perform actions which not necessarily going as per my raga dvesha. That is where we need competence. Just because you have learned coding, or you can sing, or you can dance, well, those are nice skills to have, okay? Here we're talking about your entire life. How you do the karma you do, that is what transforms karma into yoga. And if you say, oh, I'm very busy, I don't have any time, I would say you are the perfect candidate for Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because as busy as you are, you can bring in this attitude again and again. Because no longer dharma is just dharma. Dharma is a manifestation of Bhagavan. And every time you perform a dharmic action, you are in harmony with Ishvara. That's why you can sleep so peacefully at night. Okay? Then related to this Karma Yoga understanding, there is another misconception that we must not have desires. In fact, people have, built their anxiety by saying, no, desire is bad, but that's not true. Bhagwan himself, he says, dharma aviruddhaha kamaha ahamasmi. Bharata Rishabha, I think it's the 7th chapter. So what does he say? He's saying, I am that kama, where whenever kama is not opposed to dharma, in other words, when kama, desire, is in keeping with dharma, I am that kama. Okay? So, Bhagwan has blessed everyone with 3 types of Shakti. And I love to give the example of an ant. Okay? So, my favorite, one of my favorites. Okay? I love ants. Why? Because I find them so fascinating. This ant, you can say any ant actually, this ant wants a piece of sugar crystal. Okay, what does the ant do? Ant wants probably to take back to the ant hill or something, so but does not just stay there. The ant walks towards the sugar crystal. Okay, so first there was Ichha Shakti, there was a desire, I want, okay, very good. Then walks, the ant has Kriya Shakti, the power to do. Then reaches the sugar crystal, and but the sugar crystal is very big. You know those big white crystals you get, which little bit one crumb was there. So now what to do? But the ant has buddhi, and the ant wonders what to do. Then few other ants come along. Then they collaborate, and then you see there are 2-3 ants that are carrying this little sugar crystal. This is the power of collaboration. The ant has Jnana Shakti, the power to know, to collaborate. Our dear human beings cannot collaborate, but the ant in his ant great wisdom can have the Shakti, the power to know. And it's so beautiful, okay? The ant can remind us that every moment of our lives we have Jnana Shakti, the power to know, we have Kriya Shakti, the power to do, and we have Ichha Shakti, the power to desire. So Ichha Shakti given to everyone is a blessing, and I would say please have desires. Just check that they are in line with dharma, okay? Wanting to find a vaccine for COVID is a very noble desire. It's very important. Thank God for those desires that people have. Wanting to address world poverty, very good desire to have. Wanting to take care of your family, very good desire. Wanting to study Bhagavad Gita, again very good desire. Okay, so never think that desires are bad. Just try to, align it with dharma. Also recognizing that dharma is very dynamic. It changes according to desha and kala, according to place and time, context, situation, and so on. But it's universal and relative in application. So this whole disposition of karma yoga, how many times shall I do the mantra? You cannot ask me that question. How many times shall I have karma yoga buddhi? It is for life. And the one who wants to know the Atma learns to live a life in this way, because the person is wanting moksha, and through her attitude transforms one's own life. So then where is the scope for stress and anxiety? Because you are taken care of. All these misunderstandings arise because about karma yoga, desire, and so on, because of what Swami Chinmayananji would put it very nicely. He would say, if what you hear through the ears does not sink into your heart, it will leak through the mouth. Okay? If what you hear through the ears does not sink into your heart, it will leak through the mouth. And so the importance of studying from a sampradaya, very, because it's very rigorous, and there is depth and there is no scope for vagueness or doubt. That's very important. Otherwise, we will read something here, we will watch something there, and because we are bhogis, we are experiencers looking for some spiritual entertainment, then we just pick up lot of confusion. I've had to counsel many people who have come to me because of the reading and the watching that they have done. Because they think, no, but this one said this, but that one said this. So this tendency, to dig a well. Your attempt is to dig a well because you want to drink deep from the waters. But what does one do? You dig little bit here, one shallow puddle, and then one some little there. So temporarily, of course, your thirst is quenched, and you feel, wow, very nice. I am on the spiritual path. But then the depth that is required will come only when you are with a particular teacher. And although we are in Kali Yuga, there are many teachers available. You don't have to go to Uttarkashi to study. But you have to have the commitment to be with someone for some time because you want to drink deep from that well. So here Bhagwan Krishna also tells us, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninastattvadarshinaha. You want to know the self? Okay, then what shall you do? Tadvidhi pranipatena, with an attitude of surrender like Arjuna had to Bhagwan Krishna. What shall you do? You do some seva. Seva is an offering of your karma according to what the teacher needs. Okay? And also, most importantly, he says, pariprashnena. How do you do seva to a guru? By asking questions. Oh, but I thought we are not supposed to question, we are only supposed to believe. Please, okay, our Sanatana Dharma is not about beliefs, it is about understanding. That's why just look at the literature, it's mind-boggling. What goes in the name of Shastra is huge. And why? Because if it was a set of beliefs, well, you just believe these 20 things and then your life is set. No. People ask questions, and we see in Bhagavad Gita also, it's such a beautiful dialogue. The student keeps asking until Bhagavan keeps clarifying until the student understands. So, this lineage that we belong to, it is a very rich lineage and tradition of asking to understand. And so the ones who know Tattva Darshinaha, that is what they do, that they will respond if you have the attitude of surrender. You know, again, surrender, misunderstood word, but I'm not talking too much about it for now. I will just say that you need to have little working trust and don't go by blind belief. Try to understand what is being said, and related to that, if you have questions, feel very, very free to ask. But then one other doubt can come. Maybe I should take sannyasa, you know. Like, okay, I get what you're saying about karma yoga, but this is very attractive. Very often I think I want to walk away from it all. Then Bhagwan Krishna again, he reminds us what? Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tadyogairapi gamyate ekam sankhyam cha yogam cha yaf pashyati sa pashyati. 5th chapter. The moksha that is gained by the sankhyas, the sannyasis, is also reached by the yogis, karma yogis. And the one who sees, pashyati, what pashyati? That ekam, this sankhyam and yogam, both these lifestyles, they will help you for moksha. So never think less of yourself because, oh, I cannot take sannyasa. I see these people in orange. Somehow I have been attracted to this orange color. But what to do? My life circumstances are such. No. You have been blessed, and it's an opportunity for us to bring karma yoga into our lives again and again, and to see that all that is here is sacred. Isha Upanishad, Isha Vasyam Sarvamidam. That all that is here is Ishvara. If you are born in this culture, then maybe you will be able to see the different forms that we have of worship, and we have no confusion. So one place I used to go for a walk, this walking park or jogging park, something it is called. And at the entrance, they have a very small temple of Ganapati. So what I would find so delightful is that everyone, morning whenever they come in, So they look, because most people would have not taken their bath, but still they will look in that direction, and then they will pray whatever they are praying for, health or wealth or whatever it is. They pray, then they start marching and walking or running, whatever it is. So this is so beautiful that you pray for grace, and you can say namaste to a person, and you can also say namaste astu Mahamai, so to Mahalakshmi, or namaste astu Bhagavan Vishveshvaraya Rudram, all the way. Why? It is sacred. You say namaste to Ganga, you do worship to Ganga, you worship Aditya Devata, Savita, so on and so forth. So what a culture. Okay, what a culture where we recognize the divinity of all forms. I spent a few days in Varanasi, I think that was last year, and I heard one very beautiful Drupad rendering, and I will sing. I'm not a singer, okay, so you bear with me, but I have to share, it's so beautiful. And what he's saying is that of course Varanasi is Shiva's place. So Adi, Madhya, Anta, all that is here is Shiva. It could be, as Bhagavan Krishna says, Sarganam Adirantascha Madhyam Chaivaham Arjuna. That I was in the all that was here is really me. Okay, but so if you want to put the time construct on it, well, okay, so what is in the past and the present and the future, all the way, I pervade all laws, all principles, all forms. That is the vision, that all that is here is Ishvara. No, but there are human beings, my family, they are also pervaded by Ishvara. So I will just share this. Shiva Adya Madhya Anta, Shiva Adya Madhya Anta. So Shiva or Vishnu, whatever name you want to give, is Adi, Madhya and Anta. Very beautiful. So how can I transform my vision, which is very subjective, which is vacillating from doubt to despair to anger to sadness to everything, and I don't relate to this God, then you have some authority issues, so we have to work on that, okay? The 10th chapter of the Gita, Vibhuti Yogaha, it gives us a glimpse. And what towards the end he will say that Yadyad Vibhuti Matsattvam Shrimad Urjitam Evacha. That, because he mentions lot of things, okay, all the devatas, and some special vibhuti, some special glory he mentions. So amongst the mountains I am the Himalayas, among all this sadhana I am japa, like that, so many things are mentioned. And he closes that section by saying that wherever you see a special embodiment or a special quality, know that it is my glory. What do you mean? All the other things are not, sacred? No, they are. But our attention gets drawn to these specific things or people or qualities. So all the glory that exists, it is my vibhuti. One misconception that is there about the Bhagavad Gita is that there are 4 types of yoga mentioned. Okay, that's not what Bhagavan Krishna says. He says only 2, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. No, but there is one chapter called Bhakti Yoga, 12th chapter. Understand this well. Bhakti is love for Bhagwan. And if the person is a bhaktaha, a devotee, will the devotee stop doing karma? No, I love to sing and I love to do kirtan, I love to do bhajan, I love to make naivedyam, I offer it to Bhagwan. Very good. That's karma, right? Yes. But you people, y'all are karmathas, y'all are karma yogis. I am bhakti yogi. Okay, somebody may argue. No. A bhakta definitely has lot of karma that the bhakta naturally performs. And a karma yogi, okay, again people translate karma yoga as doing seva. Karma yoga may include seva, it is much more than seva. So the whole disposition is that my karma is an offering to Ishvara. Is that not bhakti? But when you translate karma yoga as karma without results, then there is a problem. If you say karma yoga is seva, a lot of people in yoga land, they say this, okay? Half an hour karma yoga. What? How can you have half an hour karma yoga? What they mean is seva, then use the right word. Seva, okay, so everyone pitches in to make the setup habitable, okay, so a lot of cleaning and a lot of other seva work needs to be done, and it's a contribution, you are not getting paid for it, so you are offering it as your offering, okay. So that is seva, that is good, very good, but please don't call it karma yoga, because karma yoga is 24/7. To be able to recognize that I am always blessed with these 3 Shaktis, okay, Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and I have so many roles that I am playing. So minimum roles that we have is what? You're probably a son or a daughter, then maybe sister, brother, mother, father, grandchild, work professional, then work friend, friends. So at least 7, 8 easily. Of course, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, all that I'm not saying. It will become very long, okay? So many roles I have. But how do I know what is my karma? Well, you don't have to look very far. You have all these roles and you fill up the roles, okay? You, the person who is independent of all of these roles, you fill up the role in the sense that every role has a script. So I relate to my partner in a particular way, right? 50-60% is generally what society would have, set out as mutual expectations. Then I lost my job. Oh, then I think my wife will pitch in. So it's very dynamic, okay? But the role exists because the relationship has a goal. And the goal of most relationships is to be there for each other, to show your care, support, love, contribute to the other person's happiness and growth. The way that pans out across relationships will be different. Even the way it pans out according to age and stage will be different. So all the things that you end up doing as a mother for your child when the child is 5 is very different, and hopefully is different when the child is 25, correct? So the love is there, the care is there, the support is there, but the way it manifests in that relationship is going to be different. So if I'm talking about a relationship of me and my partner, or me as a mother and my child, then how can I have Kaushalam in that role? I understand what dharma is and I bring it into my life. Oh, but I don't feel like it. My God, I just, I've had so many sleepless nights. So it's okay, let the baby cry. Baby is 6 months old. I don't care. Very rarely any mother is going to say that. They will crib in their minds and they, oh my God, like, when is this baby's sleep going to stabilize? So father will wake up, everyone is trying to quieten the baby down, but you are fully available to the child. But if the fellow at 25 says, okay mom, you have to wake me up in the morning, afternoon, night, I am going to sleep, then hopefully the mother says, shut up, come on, you do your thing, okay, you have a phone, you please keep an alarm and disable the snooze button. Age and stage different. So the joy that comes from relating to our family members, friends and all that is augmented with our understanding of dharma, and we bring that into all the roles. Okay, when I say have Kaushalam, Bhagwan says, actually I am only saying what Bhagwan says. I have nothing new to add. Okay, I am a traditional teacher, so I have nothing new to add. The